USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to the USCHO Game of the Week podcast. I'm Ed Trefzger with Jim Connelly. Our Game of the Week this week is Saturday night's tilt in Las Vegas as Minnesota takes on North Dakota. And our guest tonight is the head coach of the 2016 national champion North Dakota Fighting Hawks, and that was his first year behind the bench, Brad Berry.
Brad, obviously, anytime you get wins is good. To get the first one of the season last week against Minnesota State probably feels very good. I think your team has probably played pretty well to date, but they hadn't had the results. Getting that win on Saturday night probably feels pretty good.
Yeah, you know what? It absolutely does. You know, to get the first win, and, you know, it's young season, having 4 games in the books already, but, you know, doing things the right way, just not putting 60 minutes together. And, you know, it's great to get that first win and build momentum off it. And I know early on, offense wasn't coming for us. And then later on, something else happened. You know, goaltending and playing defensively in our zone kind of disappeared a little bit on Friday night against Mankato. But I thought on Saturday, when we did get the win, we put 60 minutes together and played a pretty sound game.
When you look at these young seasons and so early on, and there's, you know, always a change between teams year to year, and you're trying to develop an identity, and then you don't get off on the right foot maybe that you want. What do you have to do, or how do you feel in the locker room that you maybe have to do things as a coach to maybe take control or just change a feeling? What do you feel that you have to do as a coach?
Well, I think as a head coach, what you have to do is, first of all, identify the strengths and the weaknesses that you have, you know, when you get out of the chute at the start of the season. And I think, you know, for example, against Bemidji, which is a team that really plays well defensively and it's a tough game to play, we generated a lot of shots in zone time, but we didn't get pucks to the net. We didn't get rewarded for our, I guess, offensive zone play. So what we had to do is we had to make sure that we worked on our part as far as getting pucks to the net and then simplifying our game a little bit. And then, you know, obviously the course of the last on Friday night, you know, playing on our end of the rink, played against a hard, heavy team in Mankato that was very offensive and came at you in waves. And we broke down in a couple areas and we had to tighten that up. And I thought we did on Saturday. So I think it's trying to identify those things and then quickly try to make changes or adapt to it and get buy-in from your players. And we have a great group of guys that work extremely hard in practice that take the coaching part to heart. And again, we're that game on Saturday night hardened us a little bit to make us better in the future.
You just used the word hardened. There probably was a character aspect to that game too. On Saturday, you have a 3-2 lead. Looks like it's going into intermission at the second period. Then a quick turnover with 4 seconds left. You would never think a guy could get down and score on you, but Mark Michaelis, he ends up scoring with, I think it was 0.4 of a second left. You still end up winning the game, though. So you clamp down in the third period. What was going on mentally? Maybe you had to bring in the psychiatrist between the second and third period. But what did you have to do in that locker room to refocus that team?
Well, first, let's go back to the goal. You know, we're up 3-2 in the game. It's a back and forth period. You know, we let our foot off the gas on our power play. We had 30 seconds of a power play that would have ran into the third period, and we weren't sharp. And you know, playing against good players and good teams, if you do that, that's what happens to you. They scored a timely goal to tie it up. That's huge momentum for them. But I got to hand it to our guys. You know, we went into the locker room, and obviously that wasn't good enough. We made a couple adjustments and really took it to heart as far as coming out in the third period. And you know, we do scoring chances for and against that game, and you know, we came out 5-1 in favor of scoring chances. So you're right, we did lock it down, and we didn't change a whole lot the way we played, except for our focus and our mental toughness as far as trying to finish the job. And you know, it's one of those things where, you know, you have the game on your stick. You got to make sure you close it out the right way and do all the details to do that. So from that standpoint, it hardened us, it calloused us a little bit, and it'll make us better in the end of knowing that, you know, there's ebbs and flows of games, and you have to make sure that you get the momentum back.
We're talking with Brad Berry of North Dakota, and obviously you're starting out with a non-conference schedule and a very strong one. Obviously, this weekend You'll play Minnesota. You follow that up with more nationally ranked games. I believe it's Wisconsin after that. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of layups when you come off of Minnesota State. I assume that you, as a coach, know what you're doing in terms of what you want in terms of a non-conference slate. How do you personally approach non-conference hockey? Because there's some coaches that would say, schedule anybody, win them, that's good. You seem to take an approach where we're going to schedule some of the best opponents.
100%. And like I said, it's one of those things that, when we schedule, we schedule 3 or 4 years out. So when we did these games, you don't really know what a team is going to have for seniors and juniors and pro-type players until you really play those games, because a lot of things happen. But in saying that, we want to play against tough opponents because we want to try to get better as a team. And obviously you want to win those games and because they mean so much on the conference side. But again, when we use that word hardened and callous, we say that for a reason, because I felt that this was March playoff hockey this past weekend against Mankato. The pace, the physicality, the end-to-end action. It was a top-notch weekend as far as play on the ice. So that'll make both teams better as we go forward. And when you have young teams, we had 3 true freshmen in the lineup this weekend. They get their eyes wide open and they get to see the level of play that they have to get to. And again, it makes it better down the road. Now, in saying that, you got to win those games. That's the balance of scheduling hard teams. But again, we feel there's a benefit long-term versus short-term.
Coming up this Saturday, you've got Minnesota in a very non-traditional place, the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame game in Las Vegas. Anything special that you need to do to prepare the team to go to an event like that?
Well, I think we're going to a neutral site game per se, but in saying that, it's a destination for the normal person. If you're a sports entity like ourselves, as far as being a hockey club, you're going there to win a game, and you're going there to have a maniacal focus on what you have to do to win that game. And I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the Las Vegas area. And, for us, it is a student-athlete experience, but it's one of those things that we have to have a filter with fans and family and things that go on around Vegas of making sure that we block out, things that need us to have that maniacal focus.
I saw a little bit earlier, Brad Schlossman, who covers you for the Grand Forks Herald. It was up to something like 131 different cities that Fighting Hawks fans were traveling from to see you in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and you know what? That's we're very, very grateful in having that strong contingent, that strong following with our program. And it goes back to 2 years ago when we were in Madison Square Gardens playing Boston College. We had 8,000 plus fans that traveled out to New York City and had a great time there. And for our fans and families, it was a great experience. And I know for our players, it was too, playing in a historical venue as Madison Square Gardens. And now it'll be the same here, going out to Las Vegas, a place that we've never been to as a group. And again, it's, it has special ties too with the Engelstick family as their home residence being in Las Vegas and alums of our program.
This is more of a general question, but something that we've been kind of interested in following as the season starts, and that's the use of the 19th skater. And if the box scores are correct, you've gone with a defenseman twice and you've gone with a forward twice. Any thoughts on how you or how coaches in general are going to use that extra player?
Yeah, and I think to each program, they're going to have their own philosophy on how they're going to do it. For us, it's more of a, from a health standpoint, from a motivational standpoint, from somebody playing well in practice that you want to give an opportunity, in a game, if someone's not going in the game, then you have an extra body that's had a good week of practice that you can put in. It kind of worked backwards for us on Friday night. Greg Gardner was ejected out of the game 10 minutes into the game. He's one of our top line centermen, and we dressed an extra defenseman that night. So in that regard, you would have wished you had a forward out there. But again, we go on the premise of practice, on what kind of practices players have had, and then also health of our team if somebody's banged up or nicked up a little bit in one specific spot.
We're talking with Brad Berry, and that's the North Dakota head coach. And you mentioned you're going to Vegas. It is the home of the Engelstad family, and that's something that they have obviously put some investment into out in Vegas. And we see that as a market that has a potential for college hockey. Have you given much thought to what it would be like to have more desert hockey? Obviously, Arizona State starts it, but to have another team out in that area, would that be beneficial to college hockey in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. When you really think of youth hockey these days, I think they're traditional areas now, but in years past, non-traditional areas, as in Arizona or California, Illinois, doesn't have a D1 college team. Those are areas that I think rightfully need to expand. And I think by us going with Minnesota out to play in Las Vegas, hopefully it brings exposure to the D1 college game, and even on the West Coast, in the Pac-12 country, you like to hope that hockey catches on in Division I side of it.
Lastly, Brad, I'll ask you about your opponent, Minnesota. That used to be one of the most traditional WCHA rivals. I mean, those were the two schools everybody thought of in the WCHA. Different conferences now, it doesn't probably make much difference. What are your thoughts going into this weekend on this Minnesota team, and maybe even a little bit on the rivalry?
Well, you know what? A lot has, we call it the North Dakota Gopher Week. And, I know both sides are talking about it throughout the week and talking about the tradition and history. And, I think there's a mutual respect for each program. But in saying that, it's a one-game shot, and it's going to be it's going to be a great college hockey game in a neutral setting. So we're looking forward to it. When you look at our non-conference schedule, we had Bemidji, we had Mankato, we have Minnesota, then we play Wisconsin. That's the old WCHA that we're living, old WCHA ties. And I think that's a good thing for college hockey, even though that we're in our own respective conferences.
It really is. It will be the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame game. It is the USCHO.com game of the week, North Dakota, Minnesota, Saturday night in Las Vegas. And Brad, I don't know if you're a gambling man. If you do pull a slot machine, I give you the best of luck. If not, just enjoy the weekend out there. But thanks for taking the time to join us tonight.
Absolutely. It means a lot from you guys. You guys do an outstanding job. And thanks again for everything you do.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
That's North Dakota head coach Brad Berry. His Fighting Hawks take on the Minnesota Gophers in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame game in Las Vegas on Saturday night. And Jim, I always love talking to Brad.
You know what? He's very honest, and I'll tell you, he has been so direct since he got there. And obviously he knows how to approach a team. I think that's very important. He was able to get that first-year team in 2016 to buy in quickly to his philosophy, his mentality, and obviously they won a national championship. And that's been a good hockey team year in, year out. I know that it hasn't been the fastest start this year, but we know the teams that start slow can come back and do something great. We know Minnesota Duluth did that a year ago. So I look forward to watching this North Dakota team. I think they're going to have a great year as the year progresses.
Well, let's look at our lightning round, some of the games among top 20 teams that are coming up this weekend. This one probably would have been our game of the week, could have been our game of the week. And that, if it wasn't for Las Vegas, and that is Minnesota Duluth with a pair of games. Duluth ranked at number 3 at number 1 Notre Dame.
Yeah, if I couldn't have found a writer in Vegas, I definitely would have probably had turned to this series, because it is a great college hockey series, and it will be a lot of fun to watch. Obviously, Notre Dame, their first week as number 1, they're going to play a hungry and probably a rejuvenated Minnesota Duluth team. This team seems to be playing better hockey week in, week out after they had a tough start to their season against Minnesota. But I think Duluth is a strong team. But you look at Notre Dame, their first game, a 6-6 tie with Mercyhurst. That was one that I think, if you could pull anything back in a season, they might get to the end and say, boy, we'd like that game back. They didn't play well defensively. Obviously, their offense was going, but, you got to play both sides of the puck. Their defense wasn't great. They still advanced. They end up playing Providence in the championship game of the Icebreaker, and then they win that. Then last weekend, boy, what an ability to dominate a team. They went up to Omaha and not just pulled out one, but 2 very good wins, an 8-2 win on Saturday night with 4 shorthanded goals. You don't see that ever in a hockey game, but Notre Dame did that. And I think that they seem to be clicking on all cylinders. You get that feeling at one point in a college hockey season that a team takes over the number 1 spot, and they deserve it. And this is the team right now. Boy, do I feel they deserve it, and they could hold on to it for a long time. You sweep Duluth this weekend, boy, you put your stake in the ground.
St. Cloud State travels east to take on two different Hockey East teams on Thursday night against 0-3 Boston College. And this has got to start to be feeling very heavy on the Eagles that they haven't won a non-conference game since November of 2016. And now they have to try to change that, hosting St. Cloud State. And then the Huskies travel across town to take on Northeastern on Saturday. Northeastern coming in at number 18 after being swept last weekend by Union.
Yeah, it's easy to focus on number 2 St. Cloud State, number 18 Northeastern. I'm going to focus on Boston College because, boy, is this a mental check for this Eagles team. They need this win. It's not fair to say that you need to be an unranked team that beats the number 2 team in the country. But this is a Boston College team that has a lot of ability. This is a Boston College team that was the Hockey's champion a year ago, but missed the tournament because they didn't win a non-league game. They didn't win a game out of their conference. And here they are again. They're 0-3 out of conference. And you lose this game to St. Cloud, you're 0-4. You just can't put yourself in this position. They've got to find ways to win games when it's not a Hockey East opponent. And I know that this team has the ability. They have the scorers. They have the goaltender. They've got good defense. This is a team, especially now, they're going to play their first game on home ice. They should be ready for this opponent, but now you bring the number 2 team in the country in. This is a very good St. Cloud State team. So I think it's very difficult. I'll touch quickly on Northeastern. Northeastern could use this win just as much, but go to the series for St. Cloud State. This is a good litmus test for St. Cloud State. They are a team that has been playing well right out of the chute. Now they're going to go on the road and play a hungry opponent in Boston College, a hungry opponent in Northeastern. They're going to face 2 very tough teams. They could prove themselves very worthy of them this week as well.
The Ivy Leagues get started a bit later than everybody else with a 29-game schedule instead of 34 games. So number 13, Princeton, hasn't had a game. They're going to take on Penn State. Now, Penn State swept Clarkson, swept Niagara, outscored their opponents 21-7 in those 4 games. And Guy Godowski, head coach at Penn State, was quoted telling his team before one of the games last weekend, you play a fast game, you're going to win. This is going to be a tough one for Princeton right out of the gate.
I believe Godowski there too, and that has kind of been his mentality. You know, I think you have to have that personality in every skater on the team that you can skate fast and play fast. But this has been a fast team since he got there. It has improved in speed. You know, they used the puck to be fast in their early years. They've now used their skating to be fast in more recent years. That said, I think that Princeton last year proved themselves as an opponent that has a lot of ability on their top 2 lines. They have the ability in net. This is a team that could be fun to watch. I think that everybody believes they're going to be a top 2 team in the ECAC this year. Now they've got to go out and prove it. Now they've been sitting back. They've been watching teams play. They've had their little exhibition game. Now they've got to go out and prove who they are, what they are. Penn State is a perfect opponent to start with. This is a really good test for Princeton right out of the gate.
Bowling Green and Ohio State have a home-and-home series this weekend. Bowling Green at number 15, Ohio State at number 4 after a split last weekend with UMass. This is a good barometer for both teams.
Yeah, trying to understand how good Bowling Green is. I think we've understood that Minnesota State and the WCHA is a very good team. I believe that Bowling Green and Chris Bergeron, they do a good job. They have, kind of year in, year out. But nationally, they maybe haven't been the team that they, would represent a number 2 team in the WCHA. I think that this is a better Bowling Green team, and they will get a chance to prove it against what I think is a better Ohio State team than they are ranked. I think that one loss to UMass should not have knocked them down as far as it did this week. I think this is a top 2, top 3 team in the country. They'll get their chance to get right back into that spot. I think Ohio State will be another team that we're talking about in the Frozen Four. We talked to John Butchergross earlier this week for our Spotlight show, and he kind of hinted this is a good Ohio State team. We know this is good. They're going to be there at the end of the year. Whether they position themselves in the poll correctly, it doesn't matter. There are going to be some tough games that go through Columbus this year.
Finally, the game that we talked to North Dakota head coach Brad Berry about at the beginning of the podcast, number 5, Minnesota taking on number 17, North Dakota in Las Vegas on a neutral site. And I think if there's a team with more on the line right now, it's the 1-2-1 Fighting Hawks.
I think I agree with you. I think that this is a game that North Dakota will travel their fans well, so the building probably will sway in their favor a little bit, and that can matter. But at the same time, I think that Minnesota has played really well out of the gate. I think they're a strong team. This is a good test for them. This is one of their better tests. But North Dakota probably needs this game to get back to 500, to get back to believing in the fact that they're a good team, to know that they started their season out with a pretty tough slate. Obviously Bemidji wasn't ranked, but then you take Minnesota State, you take this game, and now you're going to go to Wisconsin after this. Pretty much all top 20 teams. I would put Bemidji there, even though they weren't there when they played them. I think these are 7 tough games to start the season, and to get another win would be a good confidence builder for North Dakota. I think, like I said, the building will sway in their favor. Now Minnesota will have to find a way to kind of get their gut check and say, hey, we're a good team too. And Bobby Moscow, we know that he does everything right, it seems. So I will love to watch that game from afar. I wish I could be there for that one. We will have that game covered, and I think it will be the best game of the weekend. Maybe not just from an atmosphere, but just the hockey on the ice. I think these two teams are pretty hungry, and boy, do they hate each other.
Well, Jim, we'll be talking about that game and the other games from the weekend on our USCHO Weekend podcast, which drops on Sunday night. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger. We'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of US College Hockey Online. Visit USCHO.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.